So this evening, and in fact over the next 4 weeks, I changed my plans slightly, because as some of you know, I sort of I sketch out the year's content in January, December and January. I have a year's plan as to, roughly what's going on in Annie Bennett business world. And so I put things in, knowing that things might change and might adapt and so on and so forth. And of course, over the last couple of months, it's become apparent that things are becoming very challenging for us small businesses. So it occurred to me that I could perhaps do some sessions that might be of use to you. I can't say I'm going to change the world in 4 weeks, but there might be something that resonates with some of you during some of it. So hopefully it'll be of some use to some of you. It's really not a case of there's an instant fix for any of this. And there will be a little bit of Annie tough love. I do occasionally do the tough love, don't I? So there is a bit of that. I'm not saying that, anything I'm going to talk about is sort of instant click fingers, there we are, sorted. It's far more complicated than that, as you probably realize anyway. I'm probably talking to people, to the converted. But just to let you know that, first, there's nothing here that is, I'm not going to talk about anything that's sort of an instant fix. It's all really to do with, how you look at your business and what you do with it. I'm going to need to put my glasses on because otherwise I can't read what I've got here. As you know, or as a lot of you know, I also write a blog post that goes with what I do every Wednesday. And I will pop the link to that. I haven't scheduled it actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the live link into the blog and then post the blog. So you'll get the blog. In fact, I think the blog is published on my website. It just hasn't got this link in it yet. But why am I waffling about that? Oh yes, because I have the notes. I have my notes here from the blog so that I don't go off on a tangent, which is my want sometimes. So this evening, what we're talking about, I thought this evening's session, I will talk about some of the ways that I make income that aren't involving an oven, basically. And I'll give you a little bit of history as to how I got here, which might help some of you. And then over the next 3 weeks, next week, I'm going to talk about ideal clients. And as we go through this evening, you'll realize why. Then we're going to talk about, in the third week, I think you're talking about sort of high ticket baking, weddings and events and things like that. Good evening. And then the fourth week, I'm going to talk about planning and strategy. I was going to do that first, but then I thought there's pointless doing that until I talk about all the things that you need to plan and strategize about. So the planning and the strategy will come at the end. So hopefully over the next 3 weeks, you might get some ideas, you might get some seeds of, oh yeah, I could have a go at that. That's sort of where we're at here. Hello, good evening. So where we're coming from, obviously, is it's mainly the energy price hike that is really scaring a lot of people. It's really worrying me as well. I know it's worrying a lot of people. It's been in the news an awful lot. And as I was writing this yesterday, actually, I was watching the news, Liz Truss and, all that happening. And there was a small chink of light when it was reported that she's going to announce something tomorrow. And it looks like it may be that she's going to freeze energy prices for domestic, which is, if you're a home baking business, that's what we're interested in, which might well let some of us breathe a sigh of relief. It obviously doesn't help with increase of ingredients and things, but it will help with that. So that might be a little bit of a relief for us. So I'll be watching tomorrow to see what she says about that, and then we can, think about the implications that it has for our businesses. But whenever there is a challenging, situation economically or socially, like lockdown, pandemic, I'll talk about that a bit in a second. Businesses as a whole have to look at what's going on. And there are two things in the current situation. There are two real main ways that you can go. The first way, guess which one I'm going to advocate. The first one is because all the prices are going up and no one's got any disposable money, or people have got less disposable money. The first temptation is to put your prices down so that people can afford to buy what you're offering. Okay. The second option involves having a look at what your business does, and seeing whether you can adapt and change and do something slightly different, or do something in addition to. Okay. Now, as you can probably guess, I don't advise the first one at all. I don't advise that you put your prices down so low that people can then afford them, that you are then cheaper than Mandy down the road, so that people will buy from you and not Mandy. That really is counterproductive. If you are pricing your products so low that you're not even making an hourly wage, let alone a profit, to be honest, and this is where the tough love comes in, you might as well stop it and go and get a job. Go and find a job somewhere, because it really is, you're not helping yourself. Okay. What you really need to be doing, and what successful businesses do, is they look at what's going on and they think, right, perhaps I need to adapt. I need to change. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be easy. But that is what I need to do if I want to stay in a business. Now, it's what I did in lockdown. A little bit of history as to where I got where I am now, for those that don't know. So I'd been primary teaching for 30 years. Decided to leave that. Was doing a bit of supply teaching to keep the money going, but was getting wedding cakes booked in. And then that one evening in March in 2020, when the Prime Minister came on and said, we're going into lockdown, everything's closing. In that space of about 30 minutes, my entire income for the year disappeared. So no more supply teaching, no more wedding cakes. Now, there's two things I could have done. I could have sort of lay on the floor rolling around, crying and things, but that's really not my style at all. And this is what I did do. I thought, right, what am I going to have to do now? I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and work out what I've got to do. Luckily, I was networking mainly on Facebook. Lots of business groups that I was a part of were giving advice, were giving, there were people speaking. I soaked as much of it up as I could. So that, that's another recommendation, going into business groups and seeing what the advice is from people, small business and solo businesses as well. Now, the main thing that kept me going during that first bit of 2020, the first bit of lockdown, was that I wanted my business. I wanted to have a self-employed business. I did not want to go back to full-time teaching. For me, that was not an option, because I did not want to. It was making me ill, all sorts of issues with it. So that became my why. And I think it's really important in business to have a really strong why. Why are you doing it? If your reason for having a business is important and strong enough, you will find a way to make your business work. And I really, really believe that. The determination, it is fueled by that reason why. There might be all sorts of reasons why you started your business. You might want to show your children that it's possible to do anything. That, lots of people have that as a why. There are some people that, coming back from perhaps an illness where they had to leave a job or they couldn't be employed anymore. So that is their why. So lots of people have lots of different whys, if you like. But mine was that I just did not want to go back to teaching, and I really actually didn't want to go back to being employed anymore. I don't want to be employed. I want to, make my own things. So, so that's what happened. And as I've said in my blog, like a phoenix from the ashes, sometimes it takes a disaster for something amazing to happen. And it can be surprising sometimes when something really awful happens, something amazing can come from it. And if we hadn't had lockdown, if we hadn't had the pandemic, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in the group. I wouldn't have my books. I wouldn't have my membership. I wouldn't have all the things that I'm going to be talking about this evening. I would still be, although I do obviously go back, I'm back to making wedding cakes. But I wouldn't have everything else that I just love doing. So, it's worth remembering that sometimes having to change your business slightly, you might find something actually that you absolutely love doing. So keep that sort of in the corner of your mind, that there might be something out there that's waiting for you, like it was for me. And there was one thing, and a couple of people have said this in the Facebook group, actually, and it really resonates with me. And a couple of my business colleagues say this as well. That all the way along, I have been a business owner who bakes rather than a baker who's got a business. And if you can understand the subtle difference there, I'm a business owner. It's my main priority to make my business work and to make a profit for my business. Okay. And everything I do in my business, all the cakes that I make, everything that I do, that is the aim. So that is where I'm coming from. All my, all my planning, all my strategy, all my plans are based on me making a profit. So even though there may be some cakes that I love making and some, goodies and cookies and whatever it is that I love making cookies. Actually, I used to sell them at markets, but for me, that's not profitable. So I don't do it anymore, even though I love to do it, because my business needed something different. So are you, again, a bit of tough love here. Are you a business owner who bakes, or are you a baker who just happens to have a business? Think about your mindset. Turn it on the head. Turn it on its head if you need to. Okay. So now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. Agree with everything you're saying. It will help a lot in your group to hear it. Said like, oh, fab. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. But it is true. It is true. I think lots of people, and I might put a few noses out of joint here, but to be honest, times are such that it needs to be said. People perhaps go into a baking business thinking it's going to be all sort of skipping around the kitchen with your wooden spoon and singing to the birds on the windowsill. It's not like that. It really isn't like that. It's incredibly rewarding. It is incredibly rewarding. But it's blooming hard work. And there's an awful lot that needs to be done before you even get to that oven switch, And there's an awful lot of, behind the scenes and hard work that needs to be done, which is, say, what makes the difference between being a business owner and just being a baker. So let's get to the actual, the nitty gritty of this evening's. Now that I've done the sort of the tough love and the mindset bit, I'll talk you through some of the income streams that I have. Now, obviously, I do have wedding cakes again. They go from sort of March, April this year they started. I've got a fairly full September and I've got 2 in October. I try not to have any over winter. Last year I had some at Christmas, but I try not to. I try to keep it just to the summer, because in the winter I want to concentrate on this stuff. So I do have my wedding cake income. Now, what else do I have? So the first thing, oh yes, I wanted to talk to you about this first. So what do you need? And I've talked about it a little bit, so I'm going around in circles a little bit here, aren't I? I've talked a little bit about your why, yeah, WHY. But the first thing you really need before you think about anything else is how determined are you? You've got to have determination. You've got to want to make this work. If you're going to sort of make excuses, oh, no one wants what I want to buy, everything's too expensive, no one's going to buy it, then you're not going to get anywhere, to be perfectly frank. You've got to have that, right, okay, I don't think anyone's going to buy that. What is it that I can do that people will want? Okay, and this is what these next 4 weeks are about. Hopefully trying to make you realize that there are things out there that you can do. Okay. It's been confirmed exactly what I've been thinking this week. Some of the things I love baking as I have sacrificed, as they do not make me money. Yeah. If there are things that you love baking, by all means, bake them domestically, bake them for your family, bake them for yourself. But you have to be fairly tough-brained in business. If something's not making you a profit, it's got to go. You've got to concentrate on the things that are making you money because you're a business owner. Okay. So you've got to have a dose of determination. You've got to have a dose of this is going to work. I could talk for hours about, failures. I'm always talking about there's no failures. There's only learning opportunities. About, Olympic gold medalists have had so many failures. Edison's light bulb took 10,000 goes, all that kind of stuff. If you've got the mindset of this is not going to beat me, you're going to be onto a winner because you're going to find something. Okay. Now, when I first started all this malarkey, what I did was I thought, right, what is it I can do? So I actually listed all the things I'm able to do. Excuse me, I'll have a quick drink. So number one on the list was baking. I thought I could probably do something with that. And there's all sorts of other things. I mean, as a primary teacher, there's various skills there, the various things I could have done, but I didn't really want to do anything to do with that. I wanted to come away from that completely. Although, I teach adults, but that's slightly different to, well, in fact, that's very different. There's various other things. I've been a parent. I could, impart knowledge about, how to bring up children, all those kind of things. So list all the things that that you can do, however small they are, because even the small things might lead you to think, oh, well, if I can do that, perhaps I could do that as well. And write it down, write down all the things that you can do, all the things, all the skills, all the knowledge, all the things that people sort of ask you about. Or can I just ask you about this? Things that you might advise other people on, particularly about baking, because you're all home bakers, you're all very good at baking. In the group, when someone asks a question, what kind of questions do you answer for people? Those are the kind, that's the kind of knowledge that you have. So for me, back then it was, I know how to run a home baking business. I know how to open one. I know how to, I know about food hygiene and inspections. I know about bookkeeping because I was a bookkeeper. I know about finances. So that all sort of came together in that. But don't ever think that you can't do that because someone's already doing it. Don't think that. My business mentor, a lady called Lisa Johnson, some of you might have heard me talking about her. She's the one whose course I went on a couple of years ago. And a lot of this knowledge has come from her and, her network. But she says, you don't have people saying, oh, I wanted to be a hairdresser, but there's already hairdressers. In my high street alone, I think there's 5 hairdressers and they're all booked up, So Don't be put off by having an idea that you think other people are doing, because no one does it like you. No one is you. No one will do it in your way. No one will attract the same kind of audience that you will. And that's next week when we talk about ideal clients. I'll talk about that a bit more. Okay. So, you know, once you have your ideas, you can then start thinking about, okay, what is it that I can do? It may well be that you have to change your audience a bit. For example, when, you know, at the beginning of lockdown, my audience, my followers were wedding couples, usually brides, mainly brides, but there were people who wanted wedding cakes or who were interested in wedding cakes. Now, of course, if I'm setting up a group about home baking businesses, people who want wedding cakes, there's no match there at all. So I had to build a different audience of people, of home bakers who might want to open a home baking business or who have just opened a home baking business. Do you see? So you have to have an audience of people that will buy what you're selling. Okay. And the most obvious way and the quickest way of doing that is on Facebook and Instagram, building up your followers on there. So where are we? So yeah, so what are my income streams? So once I had built my audience and I had people following me and I talked about, you know, what it is I do, the first thing I did was bring out books. Was that the first thing I did, or was the membership first? Anyway, one of the first things I did was my books. And I know that quite a few of you have got them. So most of them are my home baking business range. So there's my food hygiene record book, which I know a lot of you have got. And it's very good. Even though I say so myself, do you know, I don't big myself up enough. I've been told this. I'm too humble. But it is, lots of EHOs recommended. But anyway, so I created that. I wrote it in Canva, and there's a bit on Word as well. And I used Amazon self-publishing. And then that was my first one, actually, the handbook, that one. And I've also done some notebooks as well. There's all sorts. Once you get, oh, good, I'm glad you left the book. Once you get into self-publishing, it's a little bit addictive. And one of the reasons it's addictive is that it's absolutely free. There's no upfront cost to it at all. So my handbook, the first one I put up there, I'd started writing blogs. And so a lot of this, I took the blogs and adapted them and extended them and put some other bits in. So I had my sort of manuscript. And once I had that, I went onto Amazon. Now, the part of Amazon you need if you're looking to do this is Kindle Direct Publishing. If you go onto Amazon, you'll find it. I can't remember where on the screen it is. Oh, yes, the video will be available to watch. Sorry, you've got to go. So go to Kindle Direct Publishing. The first one I did, the handbook, took me a little while because there's a few little bits you have to do. You know, it talks you through what you have to do, but there are certain bits that I had to sort of download and read a bit to understand, because there's, you know, if you know anything about publishing, there's margins and bleed lines and all sorts of things. But once you've sort of got over those initial, oh my God, what's all this about? Then it becomes a lot easier. And you go through the process. It gives you an ISBN number. So this has got an ISBN number. Not all the books I publish you don't have to have an ISBN, but it gives you one, so you can put that on. And then you make your front cover, and I did that in Canva, and it gives you templates of the right size, so that you know when you upload it, it's going to be the right size and all your bits and pieces are going to be in the right place. And then you tell it then tells you how much it costs to print. And And then you say, okay, well, I'll sell it for this, and you put in your price, and then it will tell you how much profit you make from each book. So it's very step by step. So what I would say, if you're thinking of doing that, have a think about, the knowledge that you have. So and it doesn't necessarily have to be a book, a written book. Say my food hygiene book is basically a series of templates. There is sort of the information bit at the beginning. My order book that I did is basically a series of templates. It's one page that I've just done lots of and put into a book. Planners and journals. My notebook. Here's another one. That's the other one. What I did was I did the line. I think I did this in Word. And what I did is I found loads of quotes, and I've put quotes on the bottom of the page. Found a nice front cover on Canva. You do have to be careful with copyright of pictures. But in Canva, there's ones that you can use. So don't just pluck something from the internet, because you might not have permission to use it. And then upload it. Now, the joy with doing it, and when I did my planner, here's my planner. It's actually got windows on. Was I could then set it up as to how I wanted it arranged. So I bought a planner previously, and things weren't in the right place. With diaries, they're quite personal things, aren't they? Diaries and planners, because I like my days to go in a certain way, and I want lots of space to write notes, and so I was able to create it in Canva, and then put it all into a PDF, and then you upload the PDF onto Amazon. So that is really doable, and so it doesn't cost you any money at all. And once it's up there, apart from you having to remind your audience that it's there, there's nothing else you have to do. So it's passive income. Passive meaning that once you've done the initial work, you can just sit back and people will buy it, hopefully. And my food hygiene, to give you an idea of the cost of the amounts, I brought this out June last year. So it's had a year and 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And I will just tell you, I'm going to tell you exactly how much it has made for me, so that you get an idea. Because when you go into the publishing, you get a page with how many you're selling, what you're selling, what the royalties are, so on and so forth. So lifetime for my food hygiene record book. So in about 15 months, I've made £4,300 over £4,300 in about 15 months with just that book. Just that book alone. So you can see that there is an income there to have. If you but of course I had you lot to buy that. So you've got to have an audience. That is really important for anything that you want to sell. You've got to have people to sell it to. There's no point, I have a couple of times created something that I wanted for myself. It's up on Amazon, but no one knows about it, so no one buys it, because it's like a drop in the ocean on Amazon. You've got to point people to it if you're going to sell. And of course, the same goes if you're thinking of doing like resources and documents and sheets, recipes, that kind of thing. You can do the same on Etsy. Now, I don't know Etsy at all, but I know that people sell those kinds of things on there as well. But the same thing applies, really. You can just sort of create it and put it on Etsy and hope for the best, but hope isn't a strategy. You've got to build a following and tell that following that it's there, then they will buy. Okay. And say your audience and your ideal client is really important here. So come back next week and I'll talk to you about that and why that's important there. So my books, so my wedding cakes is probably my biggest income. Then my books is my next biggest income. And then I've got the courses and the training and the classes that I do. The income of those vary depending on, what I'm highlighting and what the need is. But that brings in around between sort of 100 and 200 a month, depending, sometimes more actually. And what I do with those is mostly I do those live and I record them. Then I put the recording on YouTube. But what you do when you're setting up with YouTube is you put it as unlisted. And then you can just get the link and give that to anyone who buys. Now, what I have is I have a website and I have a sort of system whereby I can put those in, and if someone buys, things automatically happen. You don't have to have that. You can do that all manually if you want to. So, it's not impossible just to do that. But again, you've got to have people buying. So with my YouTube channel, I have a lot free on there. And hopefully the free things, and this is partly how you build an audience, you give out some free things. I'm doing this evening for free, because I want to, to help people and I want people to be able to run their businesses successfully. But part of it, if I'm brutally honest, is that I hope some of you will buy things from me. I try and do this every week so that you know who I am, so that I'm visible. My Instagram, my Facebook, I put loads of things up there, at least daily on there, so that I'm visible constantly. And that's what you have to do with your audience. You have to let them know you're there and you have to let them know. So courses, so mine are all online. I don't do any in person, but I know that people do now, now that we're out of the danger zone with the pandemic. I know that people do. And there are ways and means. So if you're determined, you will find a way to do this. You will find a space if your space isn't big enough, and you will work it out. Okay. Just to proviso, if you're thinking of doing courses with children, just be aware that there are, checks and insurance, and also, well, there is insurance anyway. And don't think that doing things with children is easier than adults. Having been a primary teacher for 30 years, I can tell you that it isn't. But anyway, those are, some options. Is there something that you can teach, something impart, knowledge that you have that you can impart to other people? And then your determination will determine how exactly you do that. What have I got next? Oh yeah, so my membership, the Home Baking Professional Society. It's a paid membership. I have some lovely people. I know some of whom are watching this evening. And what I do regularly, at least once a month, is I do some training in there. I get people in. Some of my business colleagues come in and talk to my members about all sorts of things. We've got one next week. Kat's coming in to talk to us about using Google My Business. And she's going to give us some really good info on that. So that's another source of my income, that my membership. There is sort of technical things you have to set up with that. Because my membership, I do it again through my website, and I have various tech things set up. So that, money is automatically taken every month. I don't have to do it manually. But that is another, avenue. If you're really determined to do that, you could find out a way of making that happen. And then my other source of income is my subscription box, the Sugar Bloom box. Was it last year? Gosh, when was it? I can't remember. It was the beginning of last year. I I connected with someone in one of my business groups who runs a subscription box, and she was doing a challenge and a course to do with setting up a subscription box. And I now know quite a few people that have them. So I know a fair bit about them. And that is a great way of, again, it's all to do with audience, getting people to know about it and getting people subscribing to your subscription box. That can be a winner as well. If you know the ins and outs. Now, if anyone is interested in that, I've got a brilliant free group. Well, it's not mine, it's my colleague's free group that I can point you in the direction of. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll pop the link in. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it's Lauren Prentice who runs it, and she's an absolute expert on them. And I love my subscription box. I absolutely love it. I love, buying all the things to put in. I love packing the boxes up. I love sending them off. I love doing the training every month. It really is an absolute joy for me, and it makes me money. It doesn't make me an awful lot of money, but it does make me money. But I mainly do it because I just love it so much. If it didn't make any money, it would go, no question. There's no question about that. But at the moment it does, so it's still around. So those are my main sources of income. So, those are the things that you might need to start thinking about. How can you use what you know, what your skills are? It might even be, I've written this in the blog somewhere, that it might even be that you've got some really good skills but aren't anything to do with baking. I mentioned parenting earlier. I know lots of people who have set up parenting support, things to do with parenting, either, for young children, babies, for older children, people that have just, got knowledge about that. I know people that have set up all sorts of things to do with pets, dogs and cats, horses, even, setting up groups of just people who love what they love doing. So walking or theatre or whatever it is. If you've got a passion for something, the chances are that you can magnetize other people who also have the same passion for it. There's a lot to be said for passion. Really, really loving something and really, really doing it. Do you know what? I was scrolling through, was it Twitter or Facebook the other day? I do that far too much. But I came across a little clip of Gary Barlow on Lorraine. I don't watch daytime television on the whole. Occasionally Homes Under the Hammer, but I don't watch Lorraine. But this little clip sort of said it all. She was obviously going through, what he was doing at the current time, which is touring and all sorts of things. And she said, how do you fit it all in? And his answer was, if you really love something, you'll find the time. And I think that's the key. If you really love your business, if you really have a good, strong why you're doing your business, you will find the time and you will find the, the how as well. So that's where we're at, really, isn't it? So, gosh, it's 8:10 already. I must go. My dinner's going to burn. But I hope that has given you a little bit of, okay, yeah, perhaps I can have a think about, other things that I can do, that don't involve turning the oven on. What can I do? Write that list of skills that you have. And don't be shy, don't be coy, don't be humble. Write every single thing down that you can do. Because if you know how to do it, there's someone out there that doesn't know what you know. And therefore you can help them, and so on. So over the next 3 weeks, as I've already mentioned, next week I'm going to talk about ideal clients, finding the kind of people that will have money to buy what you want to sell, okay, where to find the people that will buy what you want to sell. If it's a question of you want to keep baking, it might well be that if you're, for example, if you're making treat boxes, it may well be that there's no longer very much a market for treat boxes, but that doesn't mean you have to give up. What you have to do is find a different audience that will buy what you can, what you are prepared to make. Okay. Oh, Laura, fellow teacher here is desperate to leave education. Your story has inspired me so much. I'm determined to make this work. Do you know, Laura, I have spoken to quite a few teachers groups and on podcasts and things about how I did it. When I was a head teacher at one point, and I'm a single parent as well, so I haven't got anyone else's income to rely on. And I have come out of teaching. I'm now actually retired because I'm old enough. I know, I don't look it, do I? I'm only 27. But I have managed to leave that now for good, because it was a world that was, as I said before, it was making me ill. It was just awful for me. And that is my why. That is my determined. That is my I'm never going back there. So this has got to work. There's no ifs and buts. It's got to work. And I say, if you're determined enough that something will happen, you will find a way. You will find a way. And if you need any help or advice in the group, then do ask. In the Home Baking Professional Society, I'm going to do some sessions. I'm going to do a session on the Kindle publishing. I'm going to go through step by step for my society, because there are some people in there that mentioned that they might want that. I might also make that available to non-members, obviously at a small cost. But if you want to come in and join the society, you are more than welcome to. Anyway, so next week, ideal clients. Week after that, we're going to talk about, weddings, high ticket baking. And then the week after that, we're going to talk about how to put it all together in some kind of plan and strategy. Okay. So there we are. I hope that's been useful. I know it is a worrying time, but there's lots of support out there. If you're in need of a specific Facebook group, for business, small businesses, that kind of thing, let me know, because I'm a member of quite a few, and I can point you in the direction of some amazing people that will help as well. My main aim is for everyone to be happy in their business, and to have successful businesses. So interested in the Kindle, yeah. I'll be doing a session for that in the society. So yes. So have a good week, everybody. I hope get your brains thinking, and get a notebook or get something and just write everything down. Keep a note of everything, and all your plans and everything, and you can sort of start to make sense of them and start to get a plan together. Okay, so yes, have a good week, have a fabulous weekend, whatever it is you're doing, and I will see you next Wednesday for ideal clients, where to find the clients that will pay what you want to charge. Okay, toodaloo then, and I will see you next week. All right, bye-bye.